A bombshell drops 3 days into the murder trial of Aileen Wuornos' first victim. The judge grants the prosecution's request to allow evidence from the other murders in court.
During the trial, one of the things I was trying to do was I was trying to let the jury understand the impact of what Aileen Wuornos' actions had done, not just to her victims, but to everyone around her.
The prosecution did a great job of making an emotional appeal to the jury. Look at how many lives have been impacted, how many people had died. This is not evidence, but the prosecution had a star witness who was going to make their case.
I believe the worst day in Aileen Wuornos' life was the day that Tyria took the witness stand against her. She was sitting at the defense table, shaking her head in disbelief. She tried to catch Ty's eye. Ty pointedly looked the other way, testified, marched down and out the courtroom without looking at Aileen once.
Tyra Moore is never charged or implicated in the homicides. She testifies against Aileen Wuornos voluntarily.
It was devastating for Aileen when Tyria turned around and testified against her. She never thought that was going to happen. That was the culmination of the end for Aileen.
On the witness stand, Ty really drove home the fact that Aileen had come home that night of the death of Richard Mallory and had had none of the after effects that you would expect from a brutal rape. There was no evidence of bruises, bleeding, distress.
The big question you have to ask yourself is how much do you trust Tyra's statement?
We were sitting on the floor watching TV, and she just come out and said, "I have something to tell you." And I asked her what, and she said that she had shot and killed a man that day.
She knew about Mallory's murder and said nothing.
Tyria Moore was a more valuable witness for the prosecution than she would have been a co-defendant. It would have been very difficult for them to have indicted her in any fashion and made the charges stick. The worst evidence against her would have been driving around in Peter Sims's car for a month.
There were some things she possibly could have been charged with, but at this stage, it's going to be a prosecutor's decision what they're going to do or what role she's going to play, whether she's going to be a co-defendant or a witness, and the decision was made that she would be a better witness.
We've always believed that had Ty Moore come forward earlier, some of these men might still be alive. But did she engage in the actual homicides? We never developed any evidence that supported that.
This trial was flawed in so many ways. I have always had a question mark over the credibility of Ty. Then we have the fact that the defense never brought up Aileen's childhood, the rape, the abuse in the house, the child being kicked out, living in tents. That all has to be relevant when you look at her crimes.
Most defense attorneys will tell you when you've got a capital case, you're going to go back to their childhood. You're going to find out anything that might in any way be a mitigating factor that could assist your client.
They certainly could have brought up her background of child abuse or neglect. I don't know why they didn't. A lot of people asked why they didn't.
You have the media, you have the state presenting a cartoonish vision of this evil serial killer. And this is a person who has had a life of trauma. And the jury needs to understand how that leads to these crimes. In this case, the defense counsel's job is to humanize the client, to look into their background, to show that they are a person worthy of mercy.
Her defense attorneys did their best, but it was a huge project and a huge trial.
What drew me to the Wuornos case initially was I wanted to extend the battered woman's defense argument to help Aileen. I'm Dr. Phyllis Chesler. I'm a psychologist, and I've interviewed Aileen Wuornos. I left phone calls for the public defender, and I said, I'm a professor, I'm a researcher, I'm an author. I would like to help you with this case. So I flew down to Aileen, and then I talked to her. I asked her a bunch of questions. I said, for example, how many times have you been raped? After she got to about 37, I said, it's enough, thank you very much, because I thought this is off the charts. In terms of just post-traumatic stress symptomatology alone, I couldn't even estimate what that would do to a living being.
There's no question that Aileen suffered from serious mental health issues. When the psychiatrist interviewed her prior to trial, she diagnosed her with delusional disorders. Why didn't the defense ever bring this up at trial?
Wuornos did not want to plead insanity, which in the state of Florida prohibits her defense team from presenting mental health arguments.
She complained that she had been abused as a child. I know people today that had incredibly terrible childhoods, and they're gainfully employed, and they're good citizens.
This is a very complicated case. You have a mentally ill defendant who's got a self-defense claim, and those two legally may not be related, but they are not mutually exclusive. Mentally ill people certainly can defend themselves.
Aileen was represented by 3 defense attorneys that just didn't have the experience, and it's obvious they were way in over their heads.